All right, well, I'd like to welcome you to our social entrepreneurship panel. We have assembled a group of august experts who will share with you their experiences in entrepreneurship and what they have learned, as well as some folks that can talk to you about resources and how you can actually take your idea and get started. So let me first go across and let y'all introduce yourselves, because you'll do a far better job of that than I will. And I'll start here on my right.
Yes, so what would you like to know about us, Mark?
Who you are, what you do, where you are.
All right, my name is Brian Rainey. I am with Awesome Inc., which is located in downtown Lexington. We are essentially a epicenter for entrepreneurship, and our mission is to build an entrepreneurial community across the state of Kentucky.
I'm Sandra Marlowe, and my business is Bakwa. I'm also downtown Lexington. We have a healthy ancient grain drink that we developed with University of Kentucky and just launched this year. And I've learned a lot on the road of bringing something from concept to market.
Hey everyone, my name is Brad Farley. My company is moderntestament.org, and it's a social media platform trying to integrate Christian testimonies and kind of like a marketing outreach for organizations that can help those people. And I'm also based in Lexington, and we are just getting started up and about ready to officially launch in about a week or two's time.
Hey y'all, I'm Joe with Trainer Joe's Health and Weight Loss. I'm a speaker, coach, and a seminar leader. Started Trainer Joe's in 2011. I'm passionate to help people primarily with weight loss and the benefits they get from that.
All right, and I'm Eric Cartman. I'm director of the Lexington office of the Kentucky Innovation Network, part of the University of Kentucky. And I am located right next door to Awesome Inc. and work with them pretty closely on a lot of entrepreneurship things. And our goal is to work with students and community, students at UK and other universities, as well as community entrepreneurs, and help them take ideas and grow them into valuable companies.
You want to put a plug in for the Global Entrepreneurship Week?
I always want to put in a plug
I thought
for
you
Global
might.
Entrepreneurship Week. So next week, this is actually a great preview event for Global Entrepreneurship Week. Next week, we have 15 events in Lexington that are all about entrepreneurship. And they range from things like the Entrepreneurs Night at the Movies to more in-depth conversations about mergers and acquisitions, intellectual property, and things like that. So there should be something for everyone. There's a pitch competition on Friday afternoon, and $3,500 in prizes, or over $3,500 in prizes that will be given away in different promotions. So we'd love to have you come to as many things as you are able to come to.
So let me throw the first question out to Sandra, Brad, and Joe, although don't answer concurrently. How did you go from having your idea for your business to actually getting to the point where you are today? What's been involved in moving into actually launching your business? As y'all are, I guess, Joe, you've been launched the longest, and then Brad, you are, what, weeks away? A week away. So how'd you go from idea to where you are today?
I spent 20 years in the insurance business, was seated most of the day, repeatedly saying the same thing over and over again. It was rewarding, a lot of fun, but I had an opportunity in 2011 to transition to something different. I'd heard about a book called Halftime, and it was talking about significance and maybe finding about midway in life that you'd want to make a change, and that was part of that. And then I had saved money in the job that I had, and it enabled me to try something with a significant level of risk. Otherwise, I don't know that I would have been able to make that move.
For me, my idea was kind of born out of some personal experiences where not only was it personally developing, but spiritually rewarding to kind of find a community that was very honest with each other and kind of talk about faith openly in a way that was constructive and non-judgmental. And I'm kind of one of those people where, you know, if I see something that I think needs to be righted, or there's an opportunity for justice to be served or something, I get pretty passionate about it. So it kind of came to this point, without going into any personal testimony or anything like that, where I kind of felt like the idea was just was literally given to me. And it was one of those things where I just had this calling where I was like, if there's one thing I'm going to do for God, this is going to be the thing I'm going to give it my all until He tells me to do something else. And so to take it from the idea, the concept, to execution has been a lot of effort, a lot of stress, a lot of disappointment, but it's perseverance and it's obedience and courage, not necessarily in yourself, but enough that you've vetted the idea and you've prayed about it and you feel genuine that this is the direction that you want to go. Once you feel firm in that, then you just run at it. That's basically what I did.
I think if you have an idea, it's a good time now that you can vet it with data as well. And in my case, I'm like many folks who find a pain point, and then an entrepreneur's mindset of a pain point is, what can I do to help solve that? And so for us, it was a very long road. I absolutely ditto. It just takes a lot of perseverance, and it takes tenacity to deal with all the unexpected obstacles that come your way. But your team is really important. Initially, my team was a family business, and now that's segued into I'm really the family member working full time, and I've been real privileged to have others on the team that are helping me execute. But it's really important to not insulate and isolate yourself off, but in order to get where you need to go, you've got to be out meeting people. You have got to be intentional about connections you make, because so often it's either those people or the people they know that can be a big part of helping you get your project where you want it to be.
Okay, well, talking about helping people take the idea and get to launch, Brian, Eric, what sort of things do you have to offer to entrepreneurs to help them launch or to help them get their idea down the road?
Well, I'll start and then hand this over to Brian, because a lot of the things that we work with are things that we work with Brian. But with my office and the work that we do, we help people in mentoring and coaching. So if somebody comes in, they say, I have an idea and I really don't know what the next step is. I just really feel like this is something that I want to do. What do you do next? And so we'll sit down and work with them on ideation, work with them on understanding how do you take that idea and turn it into a business that can make money, and things like that. So the coaching and mentoring is one part of it. And then there's a lot of events and programs that are around. So as my office is part of the Von Allman Center for Entrepreneurship at UK, and we run a boot camp program there that is open to the community as well. And so that's a program where we do a 14-week program, and you come in with an idea, and there's some education and different speakers and things are associated with it, and then they work that through the 14-week period into an idea at the end. So there's a lot of different events and things like that are around. We do a lot of peer type things. We do a startup breakfast event that's a once-a-week event where people can just come whenever they're available. And there's a number of other meetup groups and other programs around, and a lot of those are affiliated with Brian and Awesome Inc., so I'm going to let him take it from there. So,
Thanks, Eric. So how many people in the room have a business or have a business idea that maybe you're working on currently? So maybe about half of the room. Jonathan, you should have rose your hand as well. So we actually have a high school student in the room who has a business that just won a pitch competition statewide, or placed in a state competition, business competition, and he's got customers, like paying customers already. And that's really what I would encourage you guys to be working towards. If you have an idea, if you have a business concept, get to that first dollar of revenue however you can. And that's what we exist to help you guys do. Everything that we do at Awesome Inc. has to do with either the creation or the education of entrepreneurship and technology. So we have a bunch of different programs that help with educating entrepreneurs, educating technologists, and then helping create entrepreneurship. And we have a physical space that we do that, and a lot of events. You guys also have a lot of cool things going on that are right across the street. Have you guys heard of the Foundry? Has anybody heard of the Foundry? It's a new co-working space that's I think within walking distance of where we are right now. So if you don't know about that, then you need to talk to Austin or Alex or Kendall. Those guys are putting together some really cool things that are right here in your guys' backyard. You guys there's Jay, who is in the room. I think I just saw Jay earlier, Jay Moon. You've got professors. Are you a professor?
Yes.
Okay, you've got professors who will let
Some of
you.
the time.
He says, I'm all about canceling classes to let you guys go do events and entrepreneurship stuff. Like, that's a great resource for you guys to have. So I would take full advantage of that. And you should be clapping for this. He will let you take some of your class time and be working on your entrepreneurial ventures. There's another guy in town his name's Dan Lewis. If you guys know Dan, he's another very entrepreneurial guy. So these are some of the connections that are right here in your guys' backyard that I would encourage you guys to take advantage of. As far as stuff that you guys could get plugged into at Awesome Inc., I would say the most obvious and the easiest thing for you guys to get plugged into would be some of the events that we host. So we host a pitch competition every other month. The next one is in December. You guys should come check it out. I think it's on December 6th. Is that right, Emily? Yeah, December 6th is called 5 Across. It's basically like a local version of Shark Tank. So just come check it out and network with other entrepreneurials. And you come to the December one. If you like it, then you should apply to pitch at the next one, which happens in February. There are events coming up for Global Entrepreneurship Week, like crazy events next week. Eric's got a calendar of like 50-something events probably that are all happening. I think it's 15, but a lot of events that are happening next week. Startup Weekend is one that I would encourage you guys to get plugged into. If you guys are interested in coming to some of these events, Startup Weekend specifically, I can help you get to. It's a weekend-long event where you just take an idea. It can be an idea of your own, or it can be an idea of somebody else's, and you just work on that idea for 54 hours. So you're just practicing.
Last year's winner was of that?
Last year's winner of Startup Weekend was
Dr. Paul Hamilton. Of
Dr.
the
Paul Hamilton, an
School of
Asbury
Business.
alum. That is right. Yeah, was it a tax
tax
idea? Tax smack. So there's a lot of opportunities there. And if you're interested in Startup Weekend specifically, just email me, or if you email Dr. Gill, he'll connect you to me. We can get you guys some discounted tickets to things like that. But that would be what I would tell you to do right now, is show up to some events, get yourself plugged into the entrepreneur community that's being built right here in your backyard here at Asbury, and do what Jonathan has already done, and get some people to give you money for your goods or services, because that's how you're going to prove a concept out.
Okay, thanks. And we also had the winner of the Asbury Project 2 years ago, Jesse Peterson, went through y'all's coding boot camp about a summer ago, I believe.
Yeah, Jesse went through a program that is at Awesome Inc. It's called Awesome Inc. U, and we have a boot camp that is a 3-month-long program. So I'm not going to tell you to drop out of college, because that's not what I'm here to do. But after you're done with college, or if you want to do a summer version of this, you can go through a 3-month program where you learn to code for those 3 months. And at the end of it, we actually, everybody who graduates gets a job that pays somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 a year. So that's another program that we just started last year that I think you're talking about, that that Jesse was involved in. Yes.
All right, so there's a lot happening in our local community that can help take your idea beyond the idea phase. As Sandra, Brad, and Joe, as you have gone down the path of launching your idea, what are some of the things that didn't work out? What are some of the things that you wish you had done differently along the way?
I'm going to backtrack and say that before I was involved with the project I'm currently working on, I developed a children's developmental toy. And I really, really enjoyed the process of it. A pediatrician encouraged me in it. I had an opportunity to bring it through the patent pending. And that time, 18 years ago, I did not understand the value. I didn't understand the dynamic that even if I didn't decide at that point that I was in a place to gear up for manufacturing distribution, holding the patent and having the opportunity to license it is a great value. So I wish someone had explained those nuances to me a while back. And then with the current project, We had things that just continued to be a challenge. For instance, I had a concept for a drink idea. It was not something that was currently in the United States. I went to University of Kentucky, and they helped me with some things and then sent me to Louisville to a bottler. I sat down with the bottler, explained my concept, and they said, we can't do it. And their first response was, we can't bring an agricultural product into our clean production environment because we were using ancient grains. And we talked it through some more, and I came back to Lexington, and I was feeling a bit deflated because I didn't know of any other options. And I had a businessman in my sphere who gave me time and advice on the project, and he looked right at me and said, oh, you need to go back and ask again. And I thought, that would have not occurred to me, to go back and ask again. But I did my homework in the meantime. I had an opportunity to learn about where we could source inspected, clean grains, and actually there's a place in Louisville, and I had to figure out how to get to a loading dock with my car and buy the bags of grain and then go back again with a different pitch to the same bottler. So there's going to be things that you would think, you can't give up. If you have a passion for it and you have a vision for it and a desire to make it happen, there are going to be so many things that come your way that will potentially sidetrack you or throw you off or make you give up. But I just recommend that you keep looking for the people around to speak wisdom and persevere. So,
for me, I should have vetted my my developing opportunities a little bit better. So I'm kind of one-man band right now, but felt so compelled for the idea that I've decided to contract the development of Modern Testament out. And so the first time, my first rodeo, I deliberately wanted to kind of keep it local for a variety of reasons and shop the job around to a variety of different firms within the region. And it ultimately ended up picking one, but unfortunately, after months of difficulties, I'll say, it didn't work out. And so since then, I've had to expand my scope of who I'm talking to, who I'm bidding, and I had a reservation about that, thinking that it would be harder for me to keep tabs on the work that was being done. But this day and age, with the tools that are available, if you've got people, you talked about team, whether it's contracted or permanently hired, full-time hired, if you got the right tools in place, it doesn't necessarily matter where they are these days. And so, fortunately, found a firm that's I'm very happy with now, but in the process, lost multiple months worth of work and worry and money to then have to kind of pivot and redo some work and all that. So don't be afraid to go into waters that you're less familiar with, I guess is the moral of that story. It is important to find the absolute best team as opposed to the best within some sort of certain amount of parameters. So that's what I'd say.
I had an expectation that it would be a little easier than it was. I had worked very hard for somebody else for 20 years, and when I transitioned to a new career, I kind of thought people were just going to really like me and just want to come and do business with me because I was excited and had some good ideas. The missing piece to that was hard work. I wasn't afraid to do it, but I just didn't think it was going to be as necessary as it was. And if I could go back, I would have hit it a little bit harder from the very beginning, quite a bit harder from the very beginning. And the other thing would be patience. I heard a guy say an overnight success just takes 10 years, and that's something that I'm learning because many times I'm frustrated that I'm not growing more quickly, but as I look back, that oftentimes appears to be the grace of God that held me back from growing before I was really ready to grow.
Now, Joe, when we had talked on the phone earlier, you started in 2011, right? And what was your business when you started, and what is it today, and why is it the same or why is it different?
It's changed significantly. It's interesting how that happens. I was walking over here with somebody who said God oftentimes outwits us, and he's done that with me because I initially was just thinking, I'll train people and help them get healthy. and they'll all come running to me. That didn't really happen, and that was a lot of hard work for a guy pushing 50, lifting weights, handing people weights, and I was like, wow, this is, I'm never going to work enough to pay the bills doing this. And some of my clients, though, were benefiting, and some of them owned businesses, and they said, hey, would you want to come and speak to my employees about what we've been talking about? And I was like, let me think about it, yes. And so then it became me going to businesses and churches and doing seminars. So I'm still called Trainer Joe's, but somebody recently said, shouldn't that say Speaker Joe's, because it's really more of the mindset than it is anything else.
Okay, so how do y'all avoid failure in what you're doing? On the ends, those of y'all that coach entrepreneurs, how do you steer them away from failure? And those in the middle, how do you avoid crashing on those rocks?
I'll jump in, and you just almost gotta run at failure. It's better to iterate and pivot and move rather than try to build up this big project and then fail massively. You know, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the Agile project methodology, but it's about iteration, it's about getting something out there, it's about getting feedback, and then pivoting thereafter. So instead of trying to avoid or tiptoe around failure, I would encourage you to find where failure is on a small scale, and it's a lot easier to handle little tiny tidbits of small failures to then, if you want to call them that, to pivot to something greater rather than put everything behind one and then let it blow up massively. So run at it.
I believe that in our society there's such an aversion to even, that there's a huge fear of failure, and I believe that will paralyze you. I had an opportunity to hear Sara Blakely speak, 15 years ago when she had her company, was very young, it's called Spanx, and she traced back her tenacity to pursue it, and she did it solo. And the fact that in high school, her dad had a habit of at the dinner table asking the children, so what did you fail at this week? And she said, I went out for teams that I knew I wouldn't make, so I would have something that I could say, Dad, I didn't make this team, and then I could check that off. But the sting was taken out. And I think that if you have that weight of the fear of failure, that you will not pursue and get where you need to go. So for me, even with the business that I'm in now, I previously had a healthy granola on the market, worked really, really hard to do a low-fat, low-sugar, loved all I learned, loved the process and the creativity, got it out there, and really sales weren't that great, and you couldn't scale, I couldn't find a co-packer. You know, I bumped up against the reality of how tough it is to have a high-quality product and how to have a successful business model. But in that process of learning about grains and just delving in and then looking at data, I believe that is a time where instead of simply, oh, I like doing this, it's a hobby, I'll go after it. It's a time you can look at market trends. There's never been an easier time to access data to see if where you're unleashing your creativity and where you have desires and ideas for can align with so what is really happening in the market, and is this a potential for growth in the market? And I saw what was happening as carbonated soft drinks were in decline. I still don't know where this project's going to go right now, but adjusting quickly to failure and not being afraid of it is just vital for success.
Chuck said, I think, in the last meeting something about that this tests you. The business world will test you. And I thought, kind of like a marriage, it's kind of there to, it's not just for the pleasure and happiness, but to make you holy. And I think that starting your own business, being an entrepreneur is kind of that way too. It can bring you to your knees. It has me many times, and more than once, frequently I need to say, God, this is yours. God, this is yours. God, this is yours. As I really see that I need to rely on Him for everything, and certainly for a business that I'm wanting to affect people and help people and pay my bills. The other thing is, for me, I find that I'm kind of the B- student, so my success isn't from my intelligence as much as other things. So I need to always be learning and always be taking in things that are encouraging to me, because if if I'm not up and excited and passionate and thinking about things that are going to help me, then I don't do nearly as well.
So, Eric, you meet with a lot of entrepreneurs that are in the process of launching and just starting out, and you do as well, Brian. How do y'all try to steer them away from failure or help them get through failure? What are some of the things that you do to help the entrepreneurs overcome that?
So first of all, I think, Brad, I need to bring you in as a speaker in some classes, because you just gave a great synopsis of Lean Startup and Agile Startup, and that's exactly what I try to encourage people to do. I think failure is defined, there's a lot of ways you can fail. And one way is to stay in something that isn't working for a really long time because you've just been able to just kind of get by. And so I think what I would encourage people to do is find non-fatal, non-fatal failure is absolutely fine. You put out we heard a lecture a couple weeks ago from someone who was talking about Facebook marketing, and they talked about putting out maybe 10 different ads in a particular day, expecting that 9 of the 10 were going to fail. They would just pull them down and put up the 10th one because that was successful. And I think you can do that in every aspect of what you do. And I think if you're afraid to fail, then I think that leads you to that first type of failure where you're really failing in a different way. And so I think I personally would go towards the aggressive style of going out there. I'm not worried about things being perfect. I'm worried about it being good enough to get out there and I can learn something and then iterate on those trials and on those tests, and ultimately I think you end up with a better product or a better whatever it is that you're doing by doing those things. And if something fails, all you do is take one step back, but you're just doing these incremental things that aren't a huge catastrophic failure. But I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid. We hear all these statistics about what percentage of businesses fail and all that. The reality is every business fails, probably 25 times a day. That's not the concern. The concern is, are you learning from those failures, and are you avoiding fatal types of failures? Those are the ones you want to avoid.
So because I switched foreign languages from Spanish to Latin, I learned from my failure and then picked another language that I could graduate with. So unfortunately, I didn't fail fast. I just failed repeatedly. So, Brian, you have companies in a number of different stages, either those that are co-working out of Awesome Inc., or maybe people that are coming through boot camp trying to pick up the technology skills to build their app and launch. And what are some of the ideas that you've seen work out of the folks you've worked with at Awesome Inc.?
Yeah, I would say, first off, I think Eric nailed it in saying that failure is just part of the process, and we're very okay with failure being a part of that process. I think there's a saying, I think it was Denzel Washington actually, who I heard a video of saying that it's okay to have fears, but it's not okay for your fears to have you. So I think failure just fits right in there perfectly. It's okay to have some failures, and obviously nobody wants to fail. I'm afraid of failing. We're all afraid of failing. But we can't let that fear of failure own us and drive our decision making. We would actually rather, at Awesome Inc., work with entrepreneurs that have failed a handful of times and then got back up and continued to work on the next thing or continued to work on that same thing in a different way, as opposed to working with somebody who has just not tried enough things to even fail. So if you come to us and you say, hey, I've got some experience in entrepreneurship, none of the ideas that I've worked on have succeeded yet, but I've tried a bunch of things, that's actually a more attractive candidate for us to work with than somebody who hasn't failed at all but just hasn't tried any of those things at all. And I think as far as kind of the ideas that work, the ideas that work well are like these guys all described. They're ones that you can iterate on and that you can try small, tiny little experiments. I think the Facebook example that Eric said is great. Put out 10, try 10 different things and expect 9 of them to fail, but identify the one that works the best and then improve on that one. And then try 10 different versions of that one thing and expect 9 of those versions of that one thing to probably fail, and then pick the one that does the best and iterate on that, and just continue to do that cycle over and over again, fully expecting most of the work that you do to fail. And entrepreneurship, unfortunately, entrepreneurship is just hard, and there's a lot of adversity and a lot of failure that comes along with it. On the flip side, it's super rewarding, and when you do get that success, like it's something that you created, it's something that you made, and I have a ton of respect for all the people that are on this panel and for anybody that's out there that is doing their own thing, because I know how hard it really is, and I know that there's a lot of adversity and a lot of times when you do just want to quit because it's that hard. But at the end of the day, it's super rewarding to get through some of those roadblocks and to eventually experience some of that success.
It occurred to me that failure is probably a term we attach a lot of negative meaning to, and one that we use a lot. And really what y'all have described is you're experimenting, and you're conducting a whole series of experiments to put boundaries on where your product space is or where your market is, that your product is viable. And it's not failure as much as it is understanding where the current offering you have, or of the set of features you're thinking, which is the most important based on market feedback. And it's not failure as much as it is learning.
Absolutely. We actually have, so at Awesome Inc., we actually have a dashboard called the Failure Dashboard. And we encourage people to put things on the failure dashboard of their own failures and failures within their company. So it's very encouraged at our office.
Interesting. All right, let's talk a little bit about sales, because you mentioned you need to have customers actually buy your product, participate in your service, sign up for what it is you're offering. How do we generate sales? What have been some things that you've found successful in creating sales for the different organizations? And Eric, it might be having people participate, where Joe, it's going to be a completely different type of sales, where you're looking for money to exchange hands. But how do y'all drive sales?
Yeah, I'll just say very quickly, I'll let these guys answer how they drive sales for their individual businesses, but I will say that sales are everything. If you have people who are paying you for your goods or for your services, then you are winning. And if you don't have people that are willing to pay you for that good or that service, then you probably need to change something and do something else. When we look at companies that we accept into kind of our flagship entrepreneurial program, it's called the Awesome Fellowship, and we work very closely with Eric to select those companies. One of the biggest indicators of whether or not they're going to succeed is how quickly can they get to their first sale. So we call that your velocity to $1. How quickly can you, and it doesn't have to be a profitable sale. I'm just talking about a sale. Can you get someone to give you $1 for your good or service? And if you can't do that, then something is probably wrong with the product, something is wrong with the market that you're trying to reach, or your marketing messaging. Something needs to give. But if you can get people to do that, then you're winning, and that is the most important thing. So pay really close attention to how these guys answer, how they get sales.
Not to put pressure on.
No pressure, yeah. At this point, I feel I'm very much the early stage. My project just took many years of development just to get to market. But I would say pay attention to your sales, because it is what will help guide you whether you're in the right. For me, I have different types of places that could sell my product. And so then you have to iterate, they're doing better in this one than in that one, and be nimble with pivoting towards where the sales come as they come. And I think a hard thing for entrepreneurs is that we're so vested in our projects, and they're our baby sometimes. And you don't want anyone to say that your baby's ugly. But the truth is, if no one's buying your things, you have to be objective. You can't stay beholden to what you wish would be. You have to deal with the reality of what is. And the sales will be your wake-up call or your slap in the face, whether this is the same direction or how do I need to correct to position myself for the sales if it's a viable product. So I don't think I have all the answers on it at all, because I'm really early stage with being where I am, but those are my thoughts.
As someone who has not made a sale, thanks for making me feel guilty about myself. No, I'm joking. Yeah, that's all right. But the one thing I'll say real quick is something I've tried to do while I'm thinking of the idea through is to understand what the competitive landscape is, understand what is working well for them, and maybe some features that aren't working well. It could be just as simple as, customer reviews, different forums or whatever, but try to find out how to message my differentiation and the niche that I feed into so that my messaging is clear, and then there's a value prop behind what I'm saying so that it can convince somebody, like, oh yeah, I can see why I would pay money for that. So that's my attempt, or that's my strategy anyway.
Wow, great question. I was in sales for 20 years and did very well working at an insurance job. This is different. This is very different. I was listening to a YouTube the other day, and a guy was saying, he said, if I had $1,000 right now and I had to decide between spending it on marketing or improving my product, he said, I would spend it on improving my product. But then at the same time, I'm like, man, we got a great product. We just got to get people to know about it. I met with the GM at Lexington Athletic Club this morning, and we were talking about the groups that I hold there. And he had some ideas, and I said, we need these groups to be bigger. I need more people at these seminars that I'm doing. And he said, you need to come here and network. You need to spend time here. You need to participate in our classes. You need to be part of our community here. So there's so many ideas on that. If any of you are really wanting to go into sales, feel free to come talk to me after the meeting. I need somebody to help me sell. There's Facebook, and there's putting things out there. Then there's going out and meeting people face to face, which tends to be very scary for most of us, just to go out there and the door-to-door, face-to-face with people. And I don't know how you get away from that. We've had success with both, but probably more. And I'm in a networking group, and I've got people that go out for me and talk to other people and talk to their friends. So these are all just ideas I'm thinking of as we're sitting here.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my colleague, Dr. George Allen, teaches 3 different classes at the University on sales that will do an excellent job of preparing you in your entrepreneurial venture. So don't think of sales as just something that occurs in large companies. It is critically important for the entrepreneur. Without sales, you just have a great idea and a great product, but no market. So you need to develop that market. Eric.
So actually, most of the companies that I work with, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, somebody mentioned before, you look at your startup and your product as a child, or that's your baby. And because of that, I think a lot of entrepreneurs follow the build it and they will come philosophy. If I spend months, if I spend years, if I spend thousands of dollars, if I spend all these different things to the point that I have something that I can sell, surely they will buy it because my baby's beautiful and this is going to be, I have no competition and it's so much better and all that. And I do a whole other talk about competition. But I work with a company in Lexington, some of you may have heard of them, called Zucker. And part of the conversation of talking with Zucker, and this is, I think, his 3rd or 4th startup. So he's learned over the course of the previous startups to not make this mistake. And so his idea was, before he actually designed the product, he figured out how he was going to sell it. And he figured out what is it that I'm going to go to, and who is my customer, and what is going to be my tagline, how am I going to convince them to buy. And once he knew that, he went back and designed the product. And it's so obvious in talking to him and understanding the way his business works and understanding how his sales cycle works that it is deep. It's not a layer that was added after he had a product to try to figure out how to get somebody to take it. It's a product that's designed to sell itself. But it was because he started with how am I going to sell it and then built the product around it. The other thing I would say very quickly is, and this is taking a little bit of liberty with the word sales, but I think as an entrepreneur, you are always selling. As an entrepreneur, if you're a one-person company, it's very, very risky for anyone to do business with you. It's risky for suppliers, it's risky for partners, it's risky for employees, it's risky for everybody that you want to come on and be a part of your team. And so selling actually goes, much more deep than just getting somebody to buy the product. Sandra mentioned, the first time that she went and talked to the supplier, they said no, and she had to go back. Well, she was selling herself to that supplier to get them to take her money. And as weird as that sounds, there's risk associated with, well, there's this person and they got this crazy wild hair idea that they're going to do something. I don't know that they're actually going to be able to pay me when I send them an invoice. So, you're always selling, certainly to bring employees on. I mean, if you're trying to compete with somebody that's got big benefits packages and bigger salaries than what you can pay, and what you're offering is, hey, we're going to go change the world, come jump on board. It's exciting and it's great, but, they're trying to figure out how they're going to pay the mortgage. And, so there's some realities with that.
All right, one final question before we wrap up. When we look at the Lexington entrepreneurial community, what are some things that, as a community, we do really well, and where are some gaps? Where are some opportunities for companies to play in?
So I think one of the things that we do really well, and I guess maybe I'm not the right person to say this, but I think one of the things that we do really well is we have lots of opportunities for people that have ideas and that want to form a company to get engaged in community, whether it's a meetup group, whether it's some type of a group of peers around you, no matter what it is that you're doing that can help. And there's so many people that are very giving of their time, and they're willing to mentor and coach and give very freely of their time and their expertise and their experiences. So I think that's one of the things that we do really well. One of the things that I have seen personally that is a gap for companies in our community is early stage funding and late stage funding. So a company that needs a certain amount of money that goes beyond friends and family, but maybe a little bit more than that, that's a really difficult section to fill, and there's really not a lot of options around in our community for that. And then definitely companies that get up and they need serious money. That's very difficult to find in our community as well. But there's a middle gap that we actually do extremely well. So that it's interesting.
From my perspective, especially Lexington and the surrounding areas here, there's enough people doing a lot of different things. It's large enough where a lot of people are involved in a lot of different ideas, but it's also still close-knit enough that if you get yourself to those meetups, you get yourself acclimated to Awesome Inc., that the network is only 2-3 steps to somebody who can really help you. It's not like 7 steps to Kevin Bacon or whatever it was. But it's very tight-knit in the way that it was, that you can find people who can help you, who can mentor you, who can jump on board, that kind of a thing. So just get yourself out there, and this community is pretty good about embracing that.
I alluded to it earlier, but for me, when I first started, I really did look around and see what was in Lexington that I could begin plugging into. And one organization that I've really enjoyed is it's now called Inventors Council of Central Kentucky, and their monthly meeting where they bring in the speakers is one that you'll find yourself coming up with more ideas. I usually keep a notebook or my computer open when I'm taking notes on the speaker, and I'm sketching ideas at the same time. You need to put yourself in position, and I think Lexington is unique, even in the inventor space, because of Lexmark. Well, IBM, we had a lot of folks here that were innovating and that were they were doing that by day, and then they were doing other projects at night, and they got together. So if you've never been, I really recommend attending their first Tuesday of the month is a free open meeting, and then they do a second one where if you have a project, you can bring it and sign a non-disclosure if you're a member. The first one, you don't have to be a member to attend. And so that's something I liked when I first started bringing a product to market, I made an appointment and went to the SCORE, which is the Senior Corps Retired Executives, and that was helpful, practical. And then for me, I've made wonderful use of the resources with the Small Business Development Center, with the Kentucky Innovation Network. And because we had a food product and we have UK here, I was able to find out about the Food Systems Innovation Center, which was a newer initiative when I first was developing our first product to market. And that was phenomenal because the way they monetize it is that when I got to the place of needing to have a sensory study done, a focus group done, and nutritional facts panels run, there were charges for that. But my sit-down meetings for information, for consulting advice, I had full access to the food science professor. So I think Lexington has resources that the average person with an idea needs to be really intentional about seeking out. I believe that some of it's there. And at those meetings when you go, you'll probably find people then that you can follow on with. And one further thing, that I think Lexington is a nice size city for trying to cultivate what we're doing, and stay open and aware. Like, don't wear people out with like the only thing you can talk about is your project, but stay ready, because conversations can just suddenly, you can say something and then all of a sudden they say, oh, I've got a friend that's doing whatever. Like, there are really key things that can happen when you stay out there and aware and listening and looking for it. So I'm grateful for Kentucky and for Lexington, Kentucky. It's been great.
Okay, thank you. We're out of time, but our panelists will hopefully be hanging around so you can tackle them out in the lobby. We've got a brief 5-minute break, and then we have one of the winners from the first year of the Asbury Project, Emily Moon, is going to speak about By Grace Designs, her clothing company, which works both in the United States and in Ghana, Africa, and it will be a presentation you do not want to miss. So stick around for that. Let's give a round of applause and thank you to Brian, Sandra, Brad, Joe, and Eric. Thank you very much.